I still remember the exact moment my breath caught in my throat. I was standing in my own family's living room, surrounded by people who had spent years convincing themselves they knew exactly who I was. And my father looked right at me, smiled that smile I had grown up dreading, and said it loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is Maya. Don't mind her. She never really figured life out." The room rippled with polite laughter. My younger sister Priya glowed beside her new fiancé, a decorated military commander, waiting for me to shrink the way I always used to. But something happened in that room that none of them were prepared for, and it started with a salute. "My name is Maya Sharma. I am 34 years old, and the most important thing I have ever learned is that silence is not the same as weakness. I grew up in a house where worth was measured in appearances, in connections, in how impressive you looked standing next to the right people. My father built his entire identity around status, and from the time I was old enough to have opinions of my own, I was the daughter who did not fit the vision he had constructed. My younger sister Priya was the golden one. She was groomed, celebrated, positioned. I was quietly moved to the edges, treated like a smudge on an otherwise clean photograph. For years, I watched and said nothing. I listened to comments about my choices, my quietness, my refusal to play the game the way they wanted me to play it. And eventually, I understood something clearly. You cannot grow in soil that is designed to keep you buried. So at 24 years old, I left. No dramatic goodbye, no tearful scene at the door. I packed what mattered, walked out, and did not look back. I knew what they would say. I could already hear the whispers. Maya ran away. Maya couldn't handle the real world. Maya will come crawling back. They were wrong about all of it. For 10 years, I built a life they would not have recognized, in a world they had never taken the time to understand. While they were busy arranging social dinners and comparing achievements at family gatherings, I was no longer part of. I was doing something else entirely. I was working, climbing, earning every single thing I had through discipline and sacrifice, and years of choosing the harder path when the easier one was right there in front of me. I didn't need their approval to build something real. Their absence turned out to be the clearest runway I ever had. Then one afternoon, an envelope arrived at my address. Cream paper, formal font, unmistakably Priya's handwriting on the outside. She was engaged. The dinner was in 3 weeks. My presence was requested, which in our family's language meant my presence was required as a prop. She followed it with a text message so transparently calculated it almost made me laugh. She wanted me there. She needed the contrast. She was marrying a man named Daniel Reeves, a naval special operations commander whose name I knew well, whose career I had followed from a professional distance for years. And she wanted me sitting at that table looking like the cautionary tale so that everything she had built would shine even brighter by comparison. I stared at that message for a long time, and then I accepted. I dressed simply the night of the dinner. Nothing that would draw attention. I wanted to walk through that door looking exactly like what they expected, because I had learned a long time ago that the most powerful position you can be in is the one your opponent has already underestimated. When I arrived, my father met me near the entrance with that familiar look, the one that mixed mild pity with quiet satisfaction. He made a comment about my jacket within 30 seconds. Priya floated past with her ring catching every light in the room and seed about how wonderful it was that I could still make time to come despite, as she put it, not having much going on. I smiled, I nodded, I found a quiet corner, and I waited. Daniel arrived later in the evening in full dress uniform, and the room responded to him the way rooms always do around that kind of presence. Conversations pausing, eyes following, the unconscious recognition of someone who has walked through things most people will never see. My father spotted him immediately and moved across the room like a man who had been waiting all evening for exactly this moment. He brought Daniel straight over to where I was standing, and I watched his face the whole way, already composing the introduction in his mind, already savoring it. He put his hand out in that theatrical way of his and spoke loudly enough for the surrounding guests to turn. "Daniel, I have to introduce you to Maya. She's the family's little mystery. Never quite landed anywhere, if you know what I mean. We love her anyway." He laughed. Priya laughed. Several guests smiled politely into their glasses. Daniel did not laugh. He looked at me, and the moment his eyes settled on my face, something shifted in his entirely. The color left his expression. His posture changed before he had made any conscious decision to change it. And then, in front of every person in that room, he brought his heels together, straightened to his full height, raised his hand to his brow, and held a salute that was so precise and so serious that the entire room went completely still. Commander Sharma? His voice was level and clear. I didn't know you would be here, ma'am. Nobody moved. I heard someone's glass touch a table somewhere behind me. My father's laugh had stopped mid-breath. Priya had gone completely rigid beside her fiancé, her eyes moving back and forth between us like she was watching a scene she did not have the script for. Daniel, she said carefully, touching his arm with one hand. What are you doing? She's just my sister. You don't have to be funny on her behalf. Daniel lowered his hand slowly and looked at Priya with an expression that was not unkind but was absolutely firm. I'm not being funny. Commander Maya Sharma is a senior naval intelligence officer. She has directed operations that I have personally executed in the field. I have received mission clearance through her office. Whatever you think you know about your sister, I can tell you with complete certainty that you don't. The silence that followed was the kind that fills a room from the floor up. My father opened his mouth, closed it, then tried the only move he had left, which was to smile broadly and step forward and say loudly that of course he had always known I was going to do something extraordinary, that he had seen it in me from the beginning, that a father always knows. Daniel looked at him for a moment without speaking. When he did speak, it was quiet and it was exact. You introduced her as someone who never landed anywhere. You used her as a punchline in front of your guests. That is not what a proud father does. That is what an uninformed one does. Priya's eyes had filled and she was gripping her ring with both hands now, and I could see the precise moment she understood that the evening she had constructed so carefully was dissolving around her. Daniel turned to her gently, but without apology, and told her that he needed time to think, that the way a family treated its own members in private told him everything he needed to know about the values he would be marrying into, and that he was not ready to make that decision tonight. I did not gloat. I did not say a single sharp word to my father or my sister, because I had learned years ago that the people who diminish others need a reaction to feel powerful, and I was no longer interested in giving them one. I looked at Daniel, gave him a quiet nod, and said, "Thank you, Commander. Take care of yourself." Then I walked to the door, picked up my coat, and stepped outside into the cool night air. Behind me, I could hear my father's voice, urgent and unfamiliar in its tone, trying to recover something that was already gone. And I thought about the 24-year-old version of me who had walked out of that same house 10 years ago with a bag over her shoulder and everyone's low expectations following her out the door. She would not have believed this evening was possible, but she built it anyway, one quiet decision at a time, in a world that had no idea she was coming. That is the thing about people who underestimate you. They stop watching. And the moment they stop watching is the moment you are most free to become exactly who you were always going to be. Now, I want to ask you something genuinely. If you had been in my place that evening, would you have said something, or would you have let the room speak for itself the way I did? Tell me in the comments, and tell me what city you are watching from. I would love to know how far this story has traveled. And when you are done, the final screen has 2 more stories that people keep coming back to. Thank you for staying until the very end.